Good afternoon. Welcome to the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission meeting on Monday, December 17th at 2:30 in the afternoon. Glad to see you here today. May we have roll call?
Commissioner Scarpetian?
Here.
Khan?
Here.
Rob Fogel?
Here.
Sharkey is absent. President Patrick.
Here.
The agenda for the December 17th, 2012 meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on Thursday, December 13th, 2012. Item 2, upcoming council agenda items.
Yes, President Patrick, members of the Commission. On January 8th at the Housing Authority meeting, we will be requesting authorization to submit our 2013 Homeless Continuum of Care grant application to HUD, which will be in the amount of a little over $2.5 million and consist of 13 projects, most of which we subcontract with nonprofit organizations such as Essentia, the YWCA, Pat Ventures, and Door of Hope to operate projects. The projects will provide supportive services as well as temporary, transitional, and permanent housing for our homeless population. On January 15th, 2013, we have scheduled 7 reports plus a presentation. Under presentations, we plan to issue the City Council with a LEED Platinum certificate that the City has received for the Pacific Pool Project. Platinum level certificates are very rare, and it's something we are very proud of that we will present to the Council. At the Council meeting, we will also request approval to award a construction contract for the Catalina Adobe Restroom Addition Patio Roadway and Lighting Improvement Project. We will also request authorization to bid and approval of a resolution of appropriation of funds for the Civic Auditorium Roof Replacement Project. Another agenda item is to request approval to award a construction contract for the Maryland Avenue Park Project. We will also request approval of a professional services agreement for design services for the Palmer Park Improvement Project. We will request approval to execute a new 5-year commercial lease for the Verdugo Job Center building, which is a 24,000 square foot standalone building located at 1255 South Central. We are up for renewal for that. We will request approval of a resolution of appropriation to appropriate additional CDBG funds for the Essentia Access Center and the Emergency Shelter Rehabilitation Project. And lastly, we plan to request approval of another resolution of appropriation to cancel the CDBG Home Enactment Security and Safety Fire Alarm Project and transfer those funds to the new Kids Corner project, also by Home Enactment. And that's all for January 2013.
Okay, sounds like a busy meeting. What is next?
Next, we have item 3, commission staff comments.
Yes, we attended, a few of us attended to River Rock grand opening ceremony. It was a great event. It was very cold, but nonetheless, a lot of people showed up. It was a great turnout, and we had a good tour of the facility at this time, and we're looking forward to Phase 2 and Phase 3, especially the Phase 3 one. I hope we can raise enough funds to build that bridge to connect Glendale to across the freeway, and it will be a great facility for the community. I'm very glad to see that project has moved forward and it's being materialized.
Anything else? Yes.
Also wanted to comment on the River Walk park opening. It was great, and really looking forward, as you said, to the bridge. I think that is, for a bicyclist and for the equestrians, really the key to the whole thing. Also, in the last couple of weeks, I heard on the news that in the city of Santa Monica, they're looking at or have implemented a fee structure for people that are using the parks to run their businesses, whether it's personal training or boot camps and things like that. And I know that I've seen people that are doing boot camps in our parks, and I think it's something that when we're looking for funds and things like that, that would be a good place to look.
Yes, President Patrick, members of the commission, we do have a fee scheduled to reserve space in parks for those purposes, and we do get those types of requests. So we do charge a fee.
Okay, and then so if somebody is using the park to run a boot camp or to do personal training, and somebody comes by, or if somebody sees it, do we check and see if they have permits?
If it's brought to our attention, we will verify that they have a permit. They're supposed to have a permit to reserve an area in a park for a commercial purpose.
Just if I may. President Patrick, members of the commission, we did have an instance where an individual was doing as such, running a boot camp at one of our facilities. Our weekend supervisor approached him and wanted to confirm whether they had a permit. The fact that they did not have a permit, he asked him he needs to go through our permit center for the future courses that he may teach so he can get a permit. So our staff is keen to those issues and they keep an eye out for them. And anytime there is an instance that someone may not have a permit, we do refer them to Moni Carrera so that they can get themselves a proper permit to do their business.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us. I just want to jump back to Riverwalk for a minute because neither of my colleagues mentioned the fact that we had an announcement that day of a $900,000+ grant to begin work on Phase 2. So we are moving right along. It will be wonderful to have all 3 phases completed, but at least we're moving into Phase 2, so congratulations to all the staff that worked on that grant. Was a fabulous piece of news to hear.
Members of the Commission, if I may add that Mr. Mark Sturtevant, towards the end of our Commission meeting today, will do a mini presentation of the event from Wednesday to recap everything that happened for the public who wasn't present.
Okay, great, because it was a fabulous morning. Very, very fun. All right, then let's move on.
Next, we have item 4, oral communications. I don't have any cards. Item 5, consent items. At A, we have approval of the minutes, approval of the minutes of the Commission regular meeting held on November 19th, 2012.
I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes from November 19th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Scarpetian?
Yes.
Khan?
Yes.
Rottfogel?
Abstain.
Sharkey is absent. President Patrick?
Yes.
Item 6, business agenda. At A, action items. At 1, motion directing staff regarding the rescheduling of the January and February 2013 Recreation and Community Services Commission regular meetings.
Okay, we have a report, and you have the new meeting dates. January would be Wednesday, January 23rd, 2:30 to 4:30, and the February meeting would be moved to Thursday, February 14th, 2:30 to 4:30.
Thursday, huh?
Thursday, yes.
I'll move the moving of the meetings to those dates.
Okay, do I have a second?
Well said. I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Scarpetian?
Yes.
Khan?
Yes.
Rottfogel?
Yes.
Sharkey's absent. President Patrick?
Yes.
Item 6A2, resolution establishing a new fee for the private rental of the Cerritos Park picnic area and recommending that the Glendale City Council incorporate the fee into the comprehensive citywide fee schedule.
Good afternoon, President Patrick, Commission members, and fellow department staff. My name is Moni Carrera, and I oversee the Customer Service Office located in the Civic Auditorium. We're the main office that handles permitting of all the parks and some of the community buildings. Currently, and for the past approximately the past year, our office gets 2 to 5 phone calls a day to reserve Cerritos Park picnic area. Most of the callers call in, they like it because it's a secured park. There's a water feature in the summer, and it has a nice expansive grass area with a play area. What we would like to do is go ahead and add Cerritos Park and the picnic area to our current list of available facilities. We have had a few cases where multiple groups arrive at the park before the weekend supervisor or staff open the park, and they have a few problems trying to say who got there earlier so they could get the area. So we're trying to provide the opportunity to the public that they can reserve the park. With the reservation capability, we would send a staff person there who will make sure the picnic area is clean. We post signs on the tables, and my staff actually stay on site until the client who gets the permit arrives, so that way our clients don't have to get there 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes their parties aren't until 1, and they literally get there when the park opens, and then they stay there. They wait all those hours. So my staff would actually take care of that for them and make sure that they get the area that they've paid for. If this resolution is approved, we will go ahead and post signs in the park informing the public that they can make reservations. That's pretty much our request. Did you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay, so we need, what do we need? I'm sorry, I've lost this. We need a motion to approve the resolution?
It's just a resolution. I can just take roll call.
Okay. All right, then let's just take roll call for the resolution, please.
Okay. Commissioners Garpetian,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Rob Fogel,
Yes.
Sharkey's absent, President Patrick.
Yes.
Item 6A3, resolution modifying the existing registration fee schedule for the Verdugo Mountains 10K Trail Run and Hike, and recommending that the Glendale City Council incorporate the fees into the comprehensive citywide fee schedule.
Thank you, President Patrick, members of the Commission. I'm Mark Sturdivant, Senior Analyst for the Department. You have before you a report on our request to modify the fee schedule for the Verdugo Mountains 10K. You'll recall that last year you approved the rate schedule that's shown there in Exhibit 1. Those fees were $30 before March 1st, $35 from March 1st through the day of the race, and $40 on the day of the race. And after analyzing the way that our registrations came in this year, we found that there was always increased activity prior to a rate increase. And we had a 2-month period, March and April, where there was no increase in the rates. And we think that by adding a $5 increase in April and a $5 increase on the day of the race, we'll find that we receive increased revenue, and it will help us to make the race more profitable. Furthermore, we conducted a survey, and we found that these new rates are very consistent with similar trail runs throughout Southern California, so it kind of puts us on a level playing field with other races similar to our own. That's basically the summary of the request. If you have any questions, I would be happy to try to answer.
So basically, we have $5 increase. Okay.
We're starting at the same place, but we're increasing the April and the day of the race rates by $5.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, great race. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
You want to take roll call for this resolution, please?
Yes. Commissioners Garpetian,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Rob Fogel,
Yes.
Sharkey's absent, President Patrick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, what is next?
Item 6A4, motion to review and provide feedback regarding a proposed draft alcohol policy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Patrick, members of the Commission, staff, and the viewing public. My name is Teresa Alexani. I'm Executive Analyst with Community Services and Parks. Before you today is a report for a proposed draft alcohol policy for your review and feedback. I'm going to walk you through the report and through the policy just so that you are aware of the details of the policy. Feel free to stop me, or you can ask all the questions at the end. City facilities are designed and expand to enhance their profile as gathering places for both public and private events. Facilities provide increased social and recreational opportunities and opportunities for enjoyment by the community of unique settings. More and more requests are coming in from the public renting city facilities to serve alcohol beverages such as beer, wine, or champagne at their event at city facilities. Therefore, staff took some time to survey 8 surrounding cities, reviewed the current city ordinance and policy practices to develop a proposed draft alcohol policy to streamline the current permit practices to streamline the current permit evaluation process. I will present to you the proposed draft alcohol policy for your review and feedback. The current municipal code 9.20.140 prohibits alcohol consumption on city property and at city parks. However, there is an exception granted to the city manager or his or her designee to authorize or issue a permit subject to meeting specific requirements and conditions to allow drinking of alcohol beverages on city public street, sidewalk, alley, park, playground, or recreation area. Currently, the city manager must evaluate each request to serve alcohol at special events that take place in or on city facilities and consider them on a case-by-case basis. The city manager does not exercise his or her authority except in very rare special occasions. The Civic Auditorium is the only exception we have where the facility allows for alcohol sale and consumption without a formal approval from the city manager each time as part of the permitting process. Staff is recommending to formalize and expand the policy to include other designated facilities throughout the city that would allow alcohol sale, serving, and consumption. This would simplify the process and establish rules and regulations for designated facilities that would allow alcohol consumption with an approved alcohol permit. The purpose of the policy, 1, is to govern the specific locations where alcohol sales would be allowed. 2, to define the type of alcohol beverages that can be sold or consumed. And 3, set the conditions, rules, and regulations for selling, serving, or consuming alcohol at the designated facilities. Alcohol or alcohol beverages, as it's defined, would mean beer, wine, and champagne at designated facilities, except at the Civic Auditorium. It would include distilled spirits as well. The criteria that we're recommending for the facilities, or the criteria that we looked at for designated facilities, is that the facility is within a standalone building where ingress and egress can be easily controlled or managed, and or it is within an outdoor park area where area that is enclosed with structural or natural barriers. The list of facilities that we have, there's 8 within community services and parks, are the Adult Recreation Center, Spar Heights Community Center, Brand Park, Tea House and Garden, Casa Adobe de San Rafael, Catalina Verdugo Adobe, Duke Magian Wilderness Park and Barn, the Civic Auditorium, and Stengel Field for semi-pro baseball only. For the Library, Arts, and Culture Department, it would mean Central Library, Brand Library and Arts Center, Chevy Chase Branch Library, Library Connection at Adams Square, Grandview Branch Library, Pacific Park Branch Library, Casa Verdugo Branch Library, and the Montrose Crescenta Branch Library. The requirements to serve or sell or consume alcohol would basically be an approved alcohol permit, approved insurance, approved security personnel or police officers or both, a current ABC license, alcohol beverage control license, if there will be sale of alcohol or if it will be open to the public. The hours of serving or consuming would be, at city parks, it would be 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's if they meet all the criteria. City buildings would be 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and the Civic Auditorium and Brand Library and Arts Center would be 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. There could be special exceptions approved by the department director, but no later than 2 a.m. Serving of alcohol must stop at all facilities an hour before the end of each event. So all bars must shut down and all alcohol must be collected off the tables or from the bars. Consumption of alcohol is limited to the area designated on the alcohol permit, which would be specified by staff. The person with the alcohol permit may set up his or her own bar to serve to their guests. If there is no sale of alcohol or if it's not open to the public, an ABC license is not required. If the permit holder hires a caterer or bartender, then the caterer or the bartender would also have to provide insurance and be licensed by ABC. Bars can be set up in designated areas based on the location selected by staff. and a sober, non-drinking bartender server over the age of 21 must be present. The permit holder may be required to provide wristbands or ultraviolet light stamps to help identify persons over the age of 21. Alternative non-alcoholic beverages and food should be provided or should be available at the event. Bartenders, caterers must clean up any beverage spillage and must remove empty bottles and cans during and after the event. At the bar, all alcoholic beverages must be poured and served in cups, so glass and can bottles will not be allowed. Also, glass bottles for soft drinks and alcohol will also not be allowed for individual consumption. Alcohol cannot be shared with city staff and security during or after the event. And for any reason, for the safety or welfare of the public, alcohol beverage service may be terminated at or by city staff, private security, the fire department, or law enforcement. If there is sale of alcohol or if the event is open to the public, then there must be an ABC license so that the applicant would have to apply for an alcohol beverage control to the Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control for a license, and the city must have that license approved at least 3 days before the event in order to approve the alcohol permit. Caterers Type 58 permit, which is a specific type of permit that caterers can get, may serve alcohol as well, but again, they have to be licensed through ABC. Alcohol would not be permitted for events for minors under the age of 21, except for quinceañeras, sweet 16s, or similar events at the Civic Auditorium. If alcohol is detected, then of course the event would be closed down. And of course, by law, you're not allowed to serve alcohol to anybody under the age of 21. Security will be required half an hour before the start of the event, and security will have to stay on site till the end of the event. And they would have to be a private patrol operator, and of course licensed hold a current valid active license from the California Bureau of Security and Investigative Services, and as I said, carry the appropriate insurance. We would require one security person per 75 to 100 attendees for the event. So if it's a 150% event, there would be at least 2 security on site. Alcohol, if there's alcohol bottles on the table, like for example at the Civic Auditorium, if it's a formal wedding and they have alcohol on the table versus a bar setup, additional security would be required. At the direction of Glendale Police Department or the directors, they can require additional security or actual police officers and/or waive that requirement. And of course, if the city may deny subsequent requests for use of our facilities if the person or the applicant does not follow all the directions or follow all the rules. And at any time, the city manager or designee may approve exceptions to this policy for a special event. The fee that we would be proposing would be $100 per permit, and there would also be additional language that we would, staff recommends amending the municipal code to include additional language which would basically allow the sale of consuming of alcohol on city property, to make sure we include all the facilities that we've identified in the municipal code. This time, staff would like feedback from Commission on the proposed draft policy, so I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And some of the facilities that we surveyed 8 agencies, not facilities, were Burbank, Pasadena, Monrovia, Torrance, Riverside, Santa Ana, Long Beach, and Garden Grove. Thank you.
Okay. Who would like to start? Rodney?
Sure. Thanks. A few questions for you. First of all, in terms of the insurance or liability that the city would be looking at if we were to open it up to all the parks. So I noticed in your comparisons, some cities require $1 million, I think it's general liability. in addition to some cities require a liquor liability. What are we looking at doing?
We honestly, we're still working with risk management to see if we would require both. At a minimum, it would be the $1 million for general liability. The liquor liability, we still don't have clarification to the specifics of it and the amount of the liquor liability. So we are working with our risk management section to figure out the details of the insurance requirement. We know that it will be required, but whether it'll be both or just one, I'm not sure about at this time.
And what is that going to be based on in terms of what? The cost associated to the parties involved, or?
Honestly, I think it would be up to the risk manager, and I'm not sure what criteria he would look at in stating whether it would be both. And I'm sure it wouldn't just be the cost to the applicant, but of course for ensuring that the city would be safe as well.
That would be something that I'd want to understand better, because it would make sense that some of these other cities that already do that and have looked into it, there's a reason that they have that as well. So if we could further look into that, I think that'd be real helpful. The other thing is you mentioned some of these city facilities. Do all of these city facilities, like for instance the Tea House, does that have restroom facilities as well?
Yes, they do.
They have restroom facilities? Okay.
They have restrooms available in the tea house.
Okay. Because I would want to make sure if we're serving alcohol at these places, there are restroom facilities. Okay. Who oversees the shutdown? Like the bar is to be shut down an hour before the event gets shut down?
The security personnel would be, we would rely on the security personnel to make sure that they would shut down an hour before the event. And at certain events, if we had staff on site, if we were charging for staff to be on site, then staff would also make sure that the event would end an hour before.
So if staff was not there, then the security personnel that's being hired would be responsible?
It would be, right. The security personnel will be from a pre-approved list that the city has on file. So it would be security that we've worked with and have approved and have an approved list with. So it would be somebody that the city had pre-approved.
And they would know to do that?
Yes.
How would they know to do that?
It was part of our policy, and I know we do that at the Civic, so if you want, I can ask Laura to explain.
Sure. Sure.
Good afternoon. We are already exercising alcohol sale and serving at the Civic Auditorium for so many years, and based on our already traditional requirements, I'm sure Teresa put together everything. At the Civic Auditorium, maybe what we're doing right now at the Civic Auditorium will help all of us to understand better. At the Civic Auditorium, we have a permit agreement in place before even starting the event. It's signed between the city, which is the representative at the Civic Auditorium, myself, and the lessee who is renting the facility. And in the contract, the permit agreement, we clearly state those conditions. So before even calling in the security guards, which I do the hiring, the lessee already knows the conditions, our requirements, and they are enforcing these conditions as well. So during the events, they are monitoring very carefully as well. And the security guard, we do touch base with the security guard and the lessee as well before the event starting time, half hour before. That's why we're asking them to arrive half hour before, and we go over every condition in the contract. So right from the beginning, they know what is the starting point of the alcohol sale or serving, and what is the ending time. And the security guards will also enforce to shut down the event, and usually it's 1 hour before the ending time of the event, so the public get sober before leaving the facility. That's a requirement. And also the civic staff also knows about the terms on the contract, and they enforce too. So it's a combination of everybody working together. We have walkie-talkies. We communicate very clearly with each other. So that's everything in place. The permit also will indicate the insurance as the alcohol sale or serving or non-alcohol serving, and that will be also part of the contract.
Okay. In your case, you hire the security.
Correct.
In these other instances, the city's not hiring the security. It's a private individual hiring the security.
No, the city has the security, the current security guard is All Nations, and they went through the bidding process. At this point, only one security company provides services to all the departments who require security guards. And they're well-trained. I always meet with them on a monthly basis, going over our most recent requirements, and they have their already rules how they should operate at the Civic Auditorium. The contract will indicate that the lessee requires this many security guards based on number of the events, and that will cover that certain portion of the insurance that applies to that many people being in the facility, and whether, again, there's alcohol sale or non-sale, there are two different prices. And I as a representative, because we communicate directly, the civic communicates directly with the insurance company, security guard company, not the lessee. So we arrange that service for them. But the payment is coming from the lessee as part of the contract or other fees as well.
So it's anybody going for security at any of these facilities would have to use that one security company?
Exactly.
Okay.
And they're, again, approved going through the bidding process.
I think Mr. Duran would like to address this.
President Patrick, in addition to the security company, for any events that end at 10 p.m. or earlier, we also have our weekend staff that can go and make sure that the building has been cleared out and the event has in fact closed down. So it would be an issue mainly for events that go beyond 10 o'clock. But as has been indicated, they will be using a security company at our request that's pre-approved by the City of Glendale, and that would be a condition of their permit.
So just to expound on this, so if the event ends after 10 o'clock, the security company would be closing up the building. Is that correct? No. Is there staff on site at all times?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The building is being open and closed only with the staff, civic staff presence.
Okay.
Including myself most of the time.
Okay, thank you.
But your question isn't just for the Civic.
No, my question is for all of the buildings.
Right.
All the facilities
And
would have staff that would close the facility.
Okay, and I'm hearing that all the buildings will have staff as well as the security guard on duty. Okay.
Including the library.
Two more, and then I'll be quiet. One, maybe.
No, you're good.
I noticed that for the Civic, it's distilled spirits are included.
Right.
And for all the rest of the facilities, it's not. Why?
Right now, the Civic Auditorium is one of the facilities that the city has that's more like a banquet hall. So we have formal weddings, receptions, and other events, and we currently allow distilled spirits at the Civic. But we just wanted to stay away from distilled spirits at the community centers and at the parks. We just wanted to allow beer, wine, and champagne at those facilities. And
President Patrick, the honest truth is we don't have the same level of comfort with distilled spirits as we would with beer and wine and champagne. And most of the requests we get are for evening receptions. They're typically, champagne and wine type of receptions. And so we don't want to go too far, and so that's the honest truth.
Makes sense. One last question, just clarification. You mentioned about the guard, and it says one guard per 75 to 100 people. So 0 to 75, I'm imagining there is a guard or there's not a guard required?
it would not be required, but at the director's discretion, it could be required. So right now, the minimum requirement would be anywhere between 75 to 100 guests. So you're right, from 0 to 75 right now, it would not be a requirement unless on a case-by-case basis the department had determined that it would be required.
That would be something that I'd want to have us talk about, looking at being a requirement. So
Yeah, why is 75 the magic number? I mean,
To me, it would make sense 0 to 75 requires one, 75 to 150 requires somewhere in those types of thresholds. But we can talk about that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And just, you say where does the 75 come from? That's currently what we had at the Civic Auditorium, so we just expanded that to other facilities, but we'd be more than willing to look at decreasing that number or at least making it a requirement for maybe the parks versus the buildings. You guys can have that conversation and provide feedback.
How many events do you have at the Civic where there are less than 75 people and they want to serve alcohol?
Not many.
Not many?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very few, almost none. That's why the 75 was a starting number for the Civic Auditorium.
But I would think that at libraries and at some of the other facilities that are much smaller, you will have smaller groups of 50 that may want to serve alcohol, and so then you are going to need to make some kind of decision about the security guard, and it does seem like it would be easier to have it covered in the policy rather than having to make that decision every single time somebody is applying for a permit.
Yes, President Patrick, we do anticipate receiving a number of requests for events that would be less than 75 persons. So it would be great to get your feedback today on your sense of that. If your feedback is that, based on your observations and your notion, you'd like us to require a security guard for parties of 25 or more, or 0 to 75, we'd like that feedback today if we could.
Do you want to discuss this a little bit more right now?
I
thought.
Questions when my turn.
Is it on this or is it on
No,
something
it's on
else?
something else.
Okay, let's stick with this and kind of get this settled.
I agree. I think Civic Auditorium, people rent that place for 75 people party. I mean, there's like 500-600 people there all the time. That's why that magic number came, as was indicated, because nobody.
Do you
rents that
have a
place.
number that you would feel comfortable with starting at for the need for security guard? Is it 0? Is it 25? Is it 50? Is it 75?
I think that since practically, no one's going to rent a city facility for less than 25 or 30 people. And so I personally think that we should consider 0 to 75, one security guard, and then for every 75 or 100 maybe, from 75 to 175, 2, or 76 to 175, 2, and then for every, something like that. Or for every 75, an extra person. And the other thing that I would do is I would ask, since the security company has a contract with the city and they're experts in it, I would ask them kind of what they think, and also ask the PD, maybe just ask the PD what they think. What does the police department think we need to have in the way of security for these groups, unless we've already asked them.
They have reviewed the draft policy, and I think that the language that we put in there, if the director or Glendale Police Department feels that additional security would be required, we have put in language to make sure that they would be able to require additional insurance.
Well, this policy, you compared it to neighboring cities. What do they do? What do they have as far as the number of people versus the security guards?
Like
Long
Burbank,
Beach
for
and
example, Burbank says a uniformed security officer for a group of 250 or more must provide at least 2 guards. So each city is kind of different, and it depends because some of them are, some cities allow facilities like the Civic Auditorium or their equivalent of a community center or a banquet hall, and some are parks, so it varies. Or let's see, Monrovia says 1 to 99 guests, 2 guards, 100 to 199 guests, 3 guards, 200 to 250 guests, 4 guards. Riverside says 1 guard per 100 people, so it varies.
Okay.
There isn't one. It's not consistent.
I noticed that Cindy Cleary, Director of Library, Arts, and Culture, is here. Do you have any comments on this?
We often have events where people ask to serve alcohol, and there's a very small number of people. So the only concern I would have that I would want you to consider is the additional costs for that kind of group, because the rental fees are already, for a group that small, or can be prohibitive. So that would add yet another fee. And in my opinion, I think for the smaller groups at least, that our staff could handle whatever security issues would come up.
What is a small group?
Define small.
Right.
5 to 30 maybe.
I would say up to 50. And just as another note, we at most of our events that we would be serving alcohol are at Central Library. We have security guards on hand every hour that we're open, so that wouldn't be as much of an issue for us. But if it were at one of our smaller locations and it was a small group, then I'd say, as long as we have adequate number of staff, we wouldn't really need the renter to have that additional cost.
I think we need to have a floor for that number.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay,
30, 35 maybe. They indicated 50, because if you have a small party of 25 and there's a security guard standing there, I think it's kind of intimidating too. So I'm telling you, I've been in places like that. But I think we have to have a floor as a number.
Okay, what are you suggesting as a floor? Or are there other thoughts about what the floor should
20,
be?
25, 35, 50. I think
I think 50 is a good number.
Well, 50 is a little high. I mean, honestly, I understand at the library, but some of these other facilities don't have the staff there. So we're not just talking about one location, right? We're talking about all these different locations.
Right.
And we could put wording in that the director of the facility, so that would mean parks or libraries, could waive the requirement.
There's currently language in the policy that allows for additional or waiving of the required.
So
it's currently there, but whether we want to set a...
I think none of us feel real comfortable with the 75. We feel more comfortable when we get to the 50, and
35.
some of us feel more comfortable when we get to the 35 or 40 level. So if we said 50 with this language, then if it was at a facility where we thought there might be a problem and we didn't have the security guard, then you could ask for it, and if it was...
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look at it and we say, okay, there's that, which is the bottom, and then what is the increment that we would require or suggest to require each 100 or each however many people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get to the bottom number and then move to the increment number.
And I'm trying to go from the top down.
Just, if I may, President Patrick, members of the commission, if we could just keep in mind that if we do have I know we're saying that we could waive it or ask for additional, but if we set it to 35 and have to waive more than that, that would mean that more people would apply for a waiver or potentially could apply for a waiver. So it might be easier if you just look at, if the department directors look to ask for additional security where they felt would be appropriate or necessary. Just a thought.
So would 50 be a number that we're all comfortable with?
I'm okay with 50 because there's a discretionary decision that if they feel that they need to have a security guard, they will ask for it.
Okay.
And if it's like in a smaller place like Spar Heights, they may ask for it because it's in a neighborhood, residential neighborhood, it's in a smaller place. They may ask for it because it's a small hall, it's not that large. So they may, I would go with 50 and leave it up to them to make the decision at case-by-case basis.
Rodney?
I don't know. I feel that's a little high. I mean, you guys, if you want to do 50, that's fine. I'm just looking at the other comparisons of other cities. It's usually from 1 to a certain number is requiring at least 1, if not 2 guards. And I understand that. I mean, I hear what you just said. But there's a purpose to provide this exhibit. And that, and we're looking at it and saying, okay, well, what makes sense? We don't really know. Well, what are these other cities doing? And a lot of them are saying 1 to 99 requires 2, 1 to 100 requires 1. I would feel comfortable going down to 30, maybe 35, but 50 to me gets a little bit large, and I'm just not comfortable with that. If you guys are, that's fine, though.
Okay. Steve?
I'm comfortable at either number, but I like 30 better than 50. And then what I would do is, if we went to 35, and then at 100, 35 to 100, at 35 we would require 1, and then every additional 75 we would require 1 more, is what I'd like to see.
Does that make sense from a library standpoint and from a park standpoint?
President Patrick, could you repeat that, please? I want to make sure I get it down.
Okay, from at 35 or more, we would require 1 security guard, and then from 35 to 100, we would require 1.
Yeah, what I would think, if we're on the same page, is that so from 0 to 34 is 0. From 35 to, say, 100 is 1. And then either you do it in increments of 100 or 75, however you want to frame it, requires 1 more guard.
What is it currently at the Civic, Teresa?
75 to 100 would be 1 guard. So right now we'd be decreasing the Civic from 75 to 35. Or we can do an
But how
exception
about
at the Civic.
how about the additional? At what point do we get a second and third and fourth?
We say every 75 to 100, so anywhere between 75 to 100, depending on the type of event. So you would make the decision depending on the type of event, but it would be somewhere between 75
So every
So the additional, right, the additional is very close to what you said. It starts at 75. So if you want to do every 75 1 guard after 35,
right.
then that would, it's very consistent with what we're currently proposing.
So
It's just the minimum requirement that would be
at
different for the
35, we
Civic.
require 1 guard, and then 35 to 100, we require 1 guard, and then every additional 75, we would require 1 additional guard. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But with this, are we changing the civics standards as well?
That's
No, that's currently,
No.
we're lowering the civics to 35, but no one's going, practically speaking, no one rents the Civic for 35 people anyway.
Right.
So, or
How
maybe
would
they
this
do.
impact the civic rentals?
Make an addition. Yes, we do not, most of the time our event starts at least 100 people, the minimum capacity. But if I have 50 people with the alcohol use, sale, or serving, we're so much used to having security guards with the alcohol presence. So I would definitely enforce at least 1 security guard even for 50 people.
Okay, so the civic would be fine with the 35 to 100 would be
Yes,
1,
absolutely.
and then 100 to 175 would be 2.
Every additional 75 would be 1 additional,
75 to 100, or
to
I've lost it.
250,
To 250. 175 to 250 would be 2 guards.
3 altogether.
Yeah.
And I want to add, people who expect alcohol sale or serving during their events, actually it gives them comfort too. Most of the time they are the ones who's asking to increase the number of security guards, at least at the Civic Auditorium.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
All right. Does that provide what you need with that particular point?
I think so. Just to clarify, we have 0 to 34 people, no guards required, 35 to 100, 1 guard, and after that, it's every 75 people would require 1 additional guard.
Right.
Yes.
With the ability of the directors at 12 to say, no, I want you to have a guard.
Correct.
That
right.
language is already
There
in
is that language is already in there where the director
Can
would be
require.
able to require additional or waive the requirement for security.
Okay.
And then President Patrick, one more time just for clarification. So if it's 101 persons, then it's 2 security guards, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So don't
Okay.
let that 100th person in the door.
Yeah. All right. Rodney, were you finished with
Yes.
your thoughts? All
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
All right. How about you, Vartan? Or do you have some questions?
Yes, I do. As a matter of disclosure, I don't drink at all, and I don't know the difference between wine and the beer, the taste of it. So if I ask you some naive questions, you have to indulge me. Excuse
Rodney
me.
and I'll make that.
I'll help you.
Right.
Rodney and I'll make
Not a
fun of you.
Commissioner Kotkin.
Well, the permit issue. My understanding was every facility has its own ABC permits. So if the caterer has a special permit that they can go to different parties and cater and provide alcohol and beer and wine and use their own permit if the facility is not permitted? Is that what it is?
The facility doesn't need the ABC permit. It's the catering company would have to have a license with the Alcohol Beverage Control, Department of Alcohol Beverage Control, in order to be able to sell or serve alcohol at their events. So the facility itself doesn't have to be permitted by ABC. It's the event holder or the caterer or bartender that they're using.
And
Let me clarify that for you just a little bit. If an organization is going to have an event where they're going to sell alcohol, they can go to the ABC and get what they call a one-day permit. And so if somebody is having a party and they're going to sell alcohol, they get a one-day permit from the ABC.
all right, thank you. And it was indicated in the report that all the alcohol beverages are served in cups, not in cans or bottles. What is the reason for that?
We figure that it's safer if they're in a cup versus a glass bottle or a can, which could be used for.
After our fights.
Yes.
Okay,
It's also smaller amounts.
there you go.
And it probably helps with our liability coverage.
Okay. And for every permit, they're paying us $100.
Yes, for each, right.
Okay. I wanted to know what is the purpose of adding this to these facilities, because right now Civic is in a different part of the town that's on a commercial boulevard. Basically, we're moving that serving alcohol into residential neighborhoods, and I wanted to know what the reason is to add this ancillary service, if you will, to our facility. Is it just to rent them more, or it's going to increase our rental rates, or what is the reason?
Well, we have been receiving, Commissioner Garabedian, we have been receiving requests to rent out the facilities and be allowed to serve beer, wine, or champagne or alcohol at the event. So we feel like it will help us, it will make our facilities, sorry for, it's on the tip of my tongue, but basically people will want to
More
rent our
appealing,
facilities
basically.
more appealing. Appealing was the word I was looking for, and also it will help us raise revenue.
Okay,
So it's both. It's because we've been getting the requests, and also, of course, the rental, not only just the permit fee, but also if we rent the facility more, then we bring in more revenue. So it's
Right.
both.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Just along that line, we have so many facilities that would be wonderful for weddings where people want champagne and wine at a wedding. And so these facilities would then be much more attractive to people that would like to get married there, and then that will increase the number of times that we can rent the facility and increase their use and make them more attractive to the community.
One last question.
Yes.
Do we know what is I don't want to say crime rate, the incident rate of Civic alcohol-related incidents? Do we have any reports of that?
No, we've been very, very lucky.
Okay.
Because of the very intense control. The management is there constantly, the staff is there, they're very well trained too, the communication is there. We communicate with security guards are on top of everything that is happening during the event. it's just the efforts of everybody working together and monitoring very closely the event. And if something, the security guards operate in a way they have to detect any mishap during the event and try to remove it from the auditorium so the event continues in a nice manner. If it happens over and over again or happens at one time in several areas at one time, we consider a riot and we can shut down the event. We can close call the police right away. The response time is less than 3 minutes. So we've been lucky. The last incident that we had was about 5 years ago, and it was taken care of right away.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Just a couple questions, since everything else pretty much has been covered, about the designated facilities. Two in particular, Deukmejian Wilderness Park and Barn. Where would we allow alcohol to be served at Deukmejian?
Once the barn is open, it would be inside the barn. Of course, it's not open at this time, but it would be used we would allow it inside the barn for receptions and also for weddings, if it's out either in the picnic area where they might have like the reception set up or where the wedding? Amphitheater, by the amphitheater where the wedding reception might take place, they might have a champagne toast. So that's where it would be allowed at Deukmejian.
Okay, and then I'm kind of drawing a blank on the name of the facility because it's not on here. But if we're doing something for the future of the Deukmejian barn, is it Rose Lawn up in Montrose?
Rockhaven?
Rockhaven. Should Rockhaven be included in this for the future? I mean, if we're including the barn, because even though it's not ready right now, Rockhaven, it seems to me logically, should be included in this policy also.
Yes, President Patrick, members of the Commission, right now there are too many questions about what is the future for Rockhaven that I wouldn't include it as part of this policy.
Okay. And then at the Adult Recreation Center, they'll be able to do it inside or outside, correct?
It would be inside the facilities, inside the building, or outside
On the patio.
On the patio, right. It wouldn't be in Central Park. It would just be inside Adult Recreation Center.
And we get a lot of requests from downtown folks for the Adult Recreation Center.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay. I just have a nitpicky question. When we changed...
That's his job.
No, I get to do nitpicky. When we changed the GMC section 9.20.145, it still talks about the city manager has the authority to issue a permit. Are we doing something that streamlines that so that all of these requests will no longer need to go through the city manager's office?
Right. The policy itself, which is the proposed policy that we presented today, would be an internal policy that we would use. Where it says the city manager or his or her designee. So the designee would be the department heads who would follow the approved proposed policy.
That's the crux and the whole purpose for establishing the policy.
Well, I know this policy has been long in coming, and I know I can't even imagine how much work it's been. So I want to thank you and thank all of the library staff and the park staff that have worked on this. You've done a great job, and I think this is a really good policy and covers a lot of bases, and hopefully we've given you the feedback that you need. So do we need to vote on that because we have a resolution and you got the feedback?
You would be making a motion providing the feedback that you just gave us.
Okay, so the feedback has to do with the number of security guards needed depending on the number of people that are at that. We also had that one question that you had about the insurance.
Yeah, I still do.
So how would you like us to handle the insurance question?
President Patrick, if I may, based on the notes that I took, it would be a motion to provide feedback to, one, strongly consider the liquor liability additional coverage, to ensure that there are restrooms available and open and usable for the events and the renters, to ensure that security guards work in cooperation with staff and/or that staff is available to close all of the facilities at the end of the events, and to implement a security guard ratio of a beginning with 35 to 100, one security guard, and then one security guard for anything beyond that at increments of 75 additional persons. And that's it, right?
Okay.
Okay, that's
Would
excellent
someone like to
feedback.
make that motion?
Moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. All, I'm sorry, I can't do all in favor till you, it's called the roll, isn't it? I'm in the wrong meeting here.
Commissioner Scarpetian,
Yes.
Han,
Yes.
Rotfogel,
Yes.
Markey's absent, President Patrick.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we can move on. What is next?
Next, we have item 6B, reports for information only at 1 monthly activity reports. A is Park Services.
Good afternoon again. I'm President Patrick, members of the Commission. What you have today are two reports. One is your typical report you receive as our monthly activity report. As you noticed from last month, we said we're going to be using the CityWorks system to be able to pull the information of the data we had inputted over the month of November. This is a new format that you're used to. Please take a look at it when you get a chance and let us know if there are any other additional information you'd like from whether it be a specific work order and or how you like this setup to be. This is being the first one. We are experimenting with it, but it was good for us to be able to pull all this information directly from the system as our staff has been inputting. It is going down by the work order number, and you may notice the actual finish dates do vary because we have two staff at the office now are entering all these work orders and the actually order they received them. So what you see over here on the screen is a presentation. What we'd like to show you is some of the projects that we do over the month. We like to highlight snippets of each project. And this month, for the month of November, we'd like to highlight some of the renovations we've done at the sports complex. We've made some general landscape improvements over this sports complex. If you had visited the past several months, you would notice that wall right there would have been, there's quite a few IVs growing around the wall, and the planter beds had quite a bit of weeds growing within them. So what we've done is we've had staff clean out the planter beds, mulch them, clean out the walls of the old dead ivy and the shrubbery. This is just the outside of the sports office. Similarly, our staff has gone to clean out through all the weeds, and they have it mulched. Additional planter beds in the parking lot. These planter beds had some shrubs that were very difficult to maintain. They were intertwined with weeds, and it was at a point where it was not manageable. So we figured to do is let the tree grow on its own and make best use of the little islands. And we mulched the planters in the parking lot as such. And this is just a different shot across the way to the soccer fields. There were 3 renovations we did in the ball fields. The ball field number 1 was desperate need of laser leveling, and we do that every several years. Staff had to go grind down the existing the dirt in the infield and bring in a specialist contractor. We fixed the irrigation problems we were having at the field. And the Ron Barron Construction brought his special equipment to get out and do a laser leveling of the infield with adding mixes in there to help it dry faster, which is diamond dry we use, and additional brick dust material to get it level to the playable level we need it to be. And this is what we would see it as a finalized product. I know it's not a very good shot, but it gives you an idea what that infill should look like. Another project our staff took on was the turf renovation at Field 3. Field 3 is I believe, the smallest of the 3 ball fields, and it is also used for AYSO. It has an overlay for AYSO use. And as you can imagine, with the soccer play, it does do a little damage to the turf. There were areas on this facility where the turf had completely died out, and there were netting from the original installation of the sod that were coming up. It became I always call it a safety issue. So we figured it best to actually go in there and take patches of it out where it was dying out. And we identified 9,000 square foot of turf that we needed to replace. Mind you, the time in the season is where sod isn't very easily available and is not going to grow. So we had to bring a specialized sod. We got them at 1.25-inch thickness, which was a little costly, but way worth the price for what we had. And we got Pacific Sod we got a bid with Pacific Sod to get them to come in. They come in 100-yard rolls of 15 feet wide, 15-yard wide, and they bring in their specialized equipment to unload them. This is the amend that we use.
It said 15-yard wide?
15-yard wide.
So it's 45 feet, almost 50 feet wide.
Just about, yes. That we use that for larger installations of complete renovations of the outfield. It really helps because you just lay it and pulls through the whole length. For the amend, we got lucky. We got in touch with a company in Corona who they're just recently come into play and working with the LA County Sanitation. They were able to provide the amendment for free for us, and all we had to pay was for shipping. So we saved a couple of $1,000s, and we'll be able to use the same company through September for free amend for other renovations in the summer, which is for us. Anytime anybody wants to donate anything, we're lucky to have it. And so these are the cutouts. Our staff had to get in there a couple of days before to cut out portions that were dead. You'll see a number of squares, rectangular shapes, L shapes that were in most need of renovation, and staff cut them all out. You already noticed this is after effect. They already put the amend in areas that we're not going to be replacing the sod. Here's another segment that needed to be replaced. And we hired a contractor to come in and lay the sod. The cost of the sod included the laying of the sod with the specialists they bring on board, the technicians. And as they rolled them out, as you notice, the one thing you'll notice, the gentleman in the white shirt right over here, what he is doing, and he's pulling the netting out of the backing of the sod, which was the problem last time it wasn't done. This way, if the sod wears out, we're not going to have the problem of the netting just kind of floating up and, with the young kids running around with their cleats, getting their cleat caught in the net and falling. That was a safety concern we had. So we made sure, you can notice right there, he rolls out all of the netting before the sod gets laid. And again, our staff working in conjunction with them, making sure the linings are there. This is the roller. Once they lay the sod, they would actually roll it to get it, down nice and firm. Again, making sure all the angles are covered. Our staff had to go in, do the angles, make sure all of the angles give a nice curvature at the outside of the infield area. And this would be the completed sod laid in that one specific area, of course. And following that, we come in, we bring more amend, and our staff will spread the amend over to cover basically whatever holes that might be left between the two layers of sod, and at the same time it acts as fertilizer to help the growth a lot faster. This is when they were finished immediately after laying of the sod. And this is what the final product looked like. I believe this was taken late last week. So we got lucky given the winter season that we had. We had a couple of days of nice, beautiful, sunny days, and it helped the turf kind of root very easy. The fact that we got the more expensive turf with the roots, the longer roots, helped us. And so this is what that facility looks like now. Moving forward, Field 4. Field 4 is the soccer field, the smaller soccer field that is artificial turf. We got a contractor to come in and do hydro grooming. We do the typical sweeping of the turf that picks up whatever dirt and little rocks or anything that might be litter on top of the turf. What this machine does, he comes in, actually shoots water pressure down to the bottom, and it rotates the cycles through the rubber from the bottom. It picks up a lot of dirt that has just been sitting. And at the same time, with this specialized equipment, it actually, the blades of the turf, it helps the blades kind of stand up more for longevity, and the fluffing of the rubber material within, it'll help extend the life of the turf. So this is one trial we did at this Field 4. This is the dragging. We drag the field afterwards. It picks up all the broken, loose fibers and all the dirt that comes up with it. Again, another picture of the contractor doing the work. And this is the sweeper. It sweeps it up afterwards. It's difficult to see here, but a close-up picture of it right here, you'll notice a lot of little rocks that come, pebbles from the bottom, from the base of the turf. And to show a comparison of one side that is done, the other side that is still to be done. And immediately after we had the senior league was playing on field 5, we had them just come out. I asked them, please come out and run on the field to let me know how you think. And they said it feels a lot softer, more cushiony, and that they liked it. And so we got some positive feedback. I'm sorry, Commissioner. Yes, the dark portion is. You could actually see the rubber pellets actually more leveled on the top. So what it did on the other side is the turf blades, as you're playing, the compaction actually pushes the turf blades down. So what it does is it pushes the rubber further down. What this system did is actually lifted the blades and it pressure washed. It pressured the pebbles, the rubber pellets to come up and fluff it up and make it softer. Helps stand the blades up and at the same time fill in the areas. What we did notice though is we noticed a lot of areas, it's 7+ years of very heavy use. We noticed a lot of the turf areas where the two different batches meet, there were torn areas. Our staff fixed one serious issue and we're working with the contractor to identify a cost, what it would be to patch those areas. And, depending on how the staff work, the area that we patch, if it's that successful, we may have our staff patch a lot more areas of that turf that is starting to show the wear and tear. And that concludes the presentation in the sports complex.
What's the suggested life of the artificial turf?
Depending on the facility that is used, a facility like ours that is used very heavily, anywhere from 6, 7, 8 years to 10 years. If a field seldom gets used, like like NFL fields, for example, it could give them a life of 12, 15 years even, because it only gets played for the games and practice is sometimes held at the facilities or whatnot. So 7 to 10 years is the ideal life. With the amount of play we have had, our fields are still in decent condition, although their longevity is starting to become a question mark. Because some of the areas, the actual turf blades that start at 2.5 inches, they're very down to about 3/4 of an inch. So in those areas, it's going to be very difficult to hold the rubber down to be able to make it softer for play. Although they're still in decent condition compared to other facilities that are 7 years old, so we are lucky. And we're trying to do best that we can to extend the life further before we are in need of having to replace it.
So my follow-up question, I guess, is for you, Jess. What are we doing to plan for that replacement?
President Patrick, members of the Commission, we are working on a plan now to utilize our enterprise fund balance to replace the artificial turf soccer fields at the sports complex. We have a fund balance now which we think would be adequate to be able to replace those fields. And we, right now, as a rough estimate, we're using a figure of $1 million for both fields. So we will probably, as part of the fiscal year 13-14 budget, we will be proposing to program that amount of money in order to get these fields done and to get it done in time before they totally wear out. So we're working on a plan.
Just not so much on that. I thought that was great. In terms of this new format, is there, for these work orders and the way that you provided them, is there a way to group them by facility?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I find that easier instead of trying to pick around it. Yeah, if you could do that, for me at least, that would
absolutely. My direction to staff was just go ahead and do it by work order numbers so I can track which came first, although given the actual finish date, some of them are still not matching up. It is the system we pull the information and dump it in an Excel file so I can sort it in any way you like, and we'll make sure going forward we'll do it by facility.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks.
And since you get it in an Excel file, if there's something that stands out to you that you want to make sure that we know about, if you could do like a yellow highlight on that row, for instance, sprayed Roundup to kill weeds, probably not as important as, something else. And so the ones that you want to make sure that we see if you could highlight those or in yellow or whatever color you choose.
We'll definitely do it. And my goal is that some things that need to be highlighted a lot further for commission and the public, my goal going forward will be is to try and give you a little glimpse of it, because it's a lot easier for me to show, the public view in public than it is with some of the horticulture, the terminology that we use. So we'll be doing both. I'll highlight the points that we like commission to really point out for them, the work we've done, and we'll try and capture some of that work also in our little PowerPoints going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. Pleasure.
What is next?
Next, we have item 6B1B, Recreation and Community Services.
President Patrick, members of the commission, in your packets, you'll find the Recreation and Community Services Activity Report for the month of November. I'd like to highlight two community events that our section staff were working. They assisted and organized the third annual Glendale Health Festival that was held on November 3rd at Pacific Community Center. We had a total of 800 participants attending the event. The event was sponsored by the Armenian Medical Society of California, Glendale Memorial Hospital, and Glendale Adventist, and our department. Over 800 attendees received, health information, screenings, medical consultations by doctors. There were 200 volunteers that worked the event in addition to the 800 participants attendees. We had doctors, nurses, phlebotomists, and medical assistants. There were a total of 278 flu shots provided free of charge by LA County Department of Health, 326 eye screenings by the Northwest Lions Club, 276 dental screenings by the USC Dental Health Mobile Dental Clinic, and 523 patients had their blood drawn for cholesterol, diabetes, and also other various testing that were provided that day. And there were many patients that were there during the event talking to doctors about health care, different medical problems that they had. And overall, it was really a good event. It was open to the public, free of charge. And the committee fundraised, and the lunch, there was a healthy lunch was provided at no charge. Over 750 free meals were provided. The second event that we had was the Club Maple Thanksgiving Party. We had a total of 75 participants. That's part of our therapeutic recreation program at Maple Park Community Center. Club Maple, they meet Mondays for the Get Fit Not Fat program at Maple Park, and then Thursdays for their recreation program between 5:30 and 7:30. Participants were given a hot meal by Honey Baked, and they had recreation games, some dancing, and some bingo. For Civic Auditorium, we had a total of 11 events, 10 being revenue and 1 event being non-revenue. Total revenue collected for the month of November was $33,646, and total revenue collected this fiscal year, $131,350. One event that we had, it was basically an 8-day event, was the Ramos Brothers Circus. That was a really successful event, and a lot of families were happy, and I know the Ramos family was happy too that they came to Glendale. So that was a really positive event for our department. We had one city department-sponsored activity, which was a personnel test. That was at the Civic Auditorium, and one delivery at Pelham Coney Park for the Glendale Crossing MTA press conference. Customer Service Office monthly permit report. We had a total of 57 permits processed for the month of November, totaling $11,324. One thing I'd like to touch on is our newly, actually fairly new, media team that we've created. The media team was created in July 2011 after the retirement of our department's public information officer. The media team is made up of representatives from various various sections of our department. We have a few members from the Community Center, Community Services Recreation Unit, CDBG, GYA, Verdugo Job Center, Human Services, and Senior Services. A few things that they've implemented the last year, they opened up a Twitter account. They tweet special events and highlight programs that we offer. We implemented the Facebook. And for spring of 2013, we're going to integrate our leisure guide into a Flipbook, which is an online service that we'll be using, which is much easier to gather information instead of loading leisure guide on an Adobe format. We're going to be using the Flipbook. We've updated all our facility brochures with newer pictures and our new rates, the current fees that we have. We're rolling out the Parks Make Life Better logo. This was a branding logo provided to us by the California Parks and Recreation Society. And last, we have 492 emails in our email list. And Sevag over at the ARC, he emails the department newsletter to 1,492 residents in Glendale. So the media team has done an excellent job the last year. There are some newer ideas coming up within the next year, new marketing ideas, so I'm looking forward to working with them to developing strategies on how to promote our classes, programs, events that we organize for our section and for our city. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Sounds like a busy month.
Yes, very busy.
What is next?
Next, we have item 6B1C, Human Services.
Well, good afternoon, President Patrick and members of the Commission. Moises Carrillo from the Human Services section. Earlier this year, I presented some projects that the CDBG program was working on, and I just wanted to update again the status of some of these projects. These are funded by the CDBG program, and we just wanted to kind of go through a few of the projects so that you can, again, when you're on the community, you can see that this is funded by the city, by the CDBG program. The projects are 6 local nonprofit agency projects with 9 facility improvements. We've got a portfolio of about $3.1 million, matched with about $2 million in private funding. So approximately about $5 million worth of projects that you'll see on the community. They service approximately about 3,000 lower income persons, unduplicated a year. So a lot of persons are served by our facility improvement projects. Our staff handles all the project management, all the contracts, agreements, and works with the agencies to really, a lot of times, handhold them through the process and work with them through some of the challenges of the capital improvement process with the city. But all in all, it's always been a very good pleasure in working with the agency. So we're going to maybe just show a few of the projects that we've gone through this year, and if there's questions, we'll take them certainly as a presentation or at the end. So we'll start off next. Oh, I can do it here. This doesn't look like very much, and this is the reason why. This is a transitional housing facility, Door of Hope. It is at an undisclosed site, so we will not broadcast its location other than this fan. This fan represents a electrical improvement at the Door of Hope transitional facility. It's actually a 13-unit facility for formerly homeless women and children who are coming out of mostly domestic violence situations. We did a full electrical improvement project of approximately $150,000. So it's a very extensive project. These fans represents the first phase of it, of installing fans. We also installed smoke detectors, hardwired the whole system. And these fans, because this building is 50 years old, there's no air in these units. So we're beginning to modernize the units with some electrical improvements. Down the road, we're going to be actually next month installing windows at each of the units so that they get some better ventilation and also save on energy costs. Final phase, of course, will be putting actual air conditioning units in the units. But for now, starting the process very slow, and as CDBG funds become available, finish off that project. Last year I did present, or earlier this year I did present Neighborhood Legal Services for their roofing project, which was completed by Neighborhood Legal Services. What we're doing now is replacing those single-pane windows you see there. There's 17 around the building with new windows. These are very old, cracking, and are definitely not safe. And do not conserve energy. So we're going to replace all 17 of these historic windows. This is a landmark here in the city of Glendale. This was an actual CDBG facade improvement project inside and outside that their CDBG staff was able to administer several years ago. As you know, Naval Legal Service provides legal services to about 1,000 Glendale residents unduplicated a year, so they're very effective in providing free legal services for our community, including housing. Home Amendment Youth Center, this center was developed by the CDBG program outside and inside. There's an area inside that has not been improved yet, and that's about a 3,000 square foot area of their facility, which will be used for, we call it Kids Corner. And that's an area where the younger children, families will have a kind of a tot area, would have a chance to play, involved in recreation activities and cultural activities with the Home Amendment RRT staff there providing that guidance. They serve, as we know, hundreds and hundreds of residents and youth with their activities all year round. The Armenian Language Society, as we know, is here on Glen Oaks Boulevard, and they're actually a very large organization that serves kind of a region-wide of not only Glendale but Pasadena and the surrounding area. We actually just finished up a roofing improvement project that redid the entire roof of the center. There was a number of, I would say, defects or issues with the roof, and we did replace the roof. It should be all done. We are finalizing some punch list items on the interior of the building. And you'll see we actually did do the full flooring, the whole inside of this community center. All the walls are painted, ceilings. If you can kind of see here, this is a Christmas party they're actually planning this year. This was taken about a week ago. And they're already moved in. They already got their stuff going. So once we do improvements, there's no hesitation with agencies to begin using their facilities and begin to provide the services to the community. Again, this is the other part of the other side of the center. We also did the bathrooms of the center. We just finished the kitchen improvements of the center, and the roof, of course. And that certainly is a building that's utilized very heavily. One of the things I did like to point out that part of our work with Human Services providing that networking of agencies, and you'll see here that ARS and Salvation Army providing the community Christmas and lunch together, and this is a very nice celebration amongst the agencies to provide Christmas lunch on the 21st of this month, free at the Salvation Army. So this is a collaboration which our section certainly encourages and utilize each other's agencies' facilities to provide services to the community. This is our newest project, and I know Commissioner Khan has been involved in this. This is our Emergency Shelter and Access Center project, which is soon to be taken by Ascensia. And this photo was taken a number of months ago. This was the original building. It was a warehouse for leaf blowers, and we're turning it into a emergency shelter. This is actually the shelter area here. And back here you'll see the case management offices. But essentially we are, and that's about a week ago, so we're very close to finishing all the exterior improvements and then begin interior by early next month, and hopefully complete the project in March or April.
Where is that located?
This is at 1851 Vibrant Street.
Street.
This is
San Fernando Road, just before you leave the city, heading southeast. It's the last street. One side of the street is in the city of Glendale. The other side of the street is in the city of Los Angeles.
This is a $2 million project. We are going to put in 40 beds along with case management, and there'll be separate areas for the families, for men and women. So it does give some privacy now, which it doesn't occur right now at the current Ascensia building. You'll see this is the administration as well as the case managers would be on this side of the building. We did want to keep the architecture very similar to what is in the community, and not really highlight as emergency shelters. You'll see a lot of nice little features in the building so that we can keep it within the neighborhood type of style of housing in that area. This is in addition to the Ascensia project. This is actually a permanent supportive housing project. This is a 9-unit apartment building that will actually be an anchor for those who are coming out of emergency shelter from the Essentia Center into permanent housing, where they'll get case management and live independently, so that there won't be any subsidies. There'll be case management, hopefully employed or receiving some assistance, so that they can begin, again, the permanent process of their lives and living in a apartment unit, which will be rehabbed by the housing section of the city. This will be a home project, $280,000 now to rehab the interior and exterior of this entire 9-unit complex. There is only one more unit that's occupied. Most of our tenants have moved out. They were given relocation assistance. We have one more that we're assisting, and then we should begin construction January 1st, 2013 to start this new project. Should be done at similar time that the other permanent, the emergency shelter is completed, so that we can have that transition smoothly from one place to another.
One quick question, Madam Chair. Is this property owned by the city or is privately owned?
This is privately owned by Essentia now, or SHO Hope. Essentia would be the owners of this property. Both properties are owned by the Essentia. However, there are property liens, deed of trust on the buildings, so that we ensure that the properties are being used for the services that's supposed to provide. And this is, I believe, a 15-year lien on this property. But it is a collaboration. I mean, it is owned privately, but there are city subsidies in the project. Last but not least, this is our community center project at Glendale Adventist. This is east of the main hospital building at Adventist. This is the community services center, which provide health services, senior services. A thrift store behind the building here is utilized very much by the patients coming out of Adventist and also the general community. We are doing some HVAC improvements and also renovating the bathrooms. It's actually a lower level floor there for the first and second floor of this building, and hopefully utilize it for more extensive community services to be provided by the Glendale Adventist Hospital. Again, this is a collaboration so that as we provide the facility improvements, the agencies can take advantage of that and utilize their social service funding to provide the services. But many have said that without the improvements like accessibility or bathrooms or fixing air conditioning, all these buildings remain definitely underutilized. So the intent of CDBG is to provide that bricks and mortars for the agencies, community facilities, as well as all the other city-owned facilities. So that's essentially the report for the Human Services section. One of our sections is the capital improvement section, and we definitely are going to be very busy. Most of these projects are starting in January 2013 with construction or finishing construction, so we'll be hopefully having some very nice openings for the coming year. So if there's any questions or comments on this one.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. What is next?
Next, we have item 6B1D, Workforce Development.
Good afternoon, President Patrick, Commissioners. I'm Don Nakamoto, the Administrator for Workforce Development. You have my written report, but today I wanted to focus on what we think is a major upcoming event, economic event in the city. Once in a while, the city experiences some of these economic events. For example, the opening of the Americana Mall created thousands of jobs. The Disney Creative Campus project created thousands of jobs. And we think we have another possibility coming up, and workforce is starting in preparation of trying to meet some of the workforce demand in that area. So I'd like to introduce one of my staff people, Lori Kadoglian. She's our in-house expert on healthcare, to give you just a short briefing about what we anticipate is coming up in the next few years for Glendale.
Good afternoon, President Patrick and members of the Commission. My name is Lori Kurdoglian. I'm the City Resource Specialist in the Workforce Development section. What I'm going to be talking to you about today is the impact of President Obama's healthcare reform or Affordable Care Act on the workforce in our region. I will talk about healthcare employment, changes that the Affordable Care Act will bring about, and how the existing infrastructure of healthcare workforce will have to be redeployed to meet those needs. And I will focus on our region. Healthcare spending in the U.S. accounts for about 17% of the gross national product. And that spending has been increasing over the years due to an aging population, population growth, and technology advancements. Healthcare employs a lot of people. In California, more than 1.2 million are employed in healthcare as of 2009, and more than 400,000 jobs have been added over the last decade in healthcare. In our region, we also have a lot of healthcare providers, and that is why the Workforce Investment Board has been focusing on and trying to keep abreast of the latest trends in that industry. Over the past several years, President Obama passed into law the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. And although the elections came and went, it looks like Obamacare is here to stay. What does it provide? It provides mechanisms such as tax credits, mandates, subsidies, basically to increase the overall coverage of Americans to have health care insurance. And that's going to change the way health care is being delivered, and in hopes to improve outcomes for the population as well as reduce the cost of delivering health care. So the Affordable Care Act will expand health care coverage to 32 million Americans that are currently uninsured starting in 2014. For Los Angeles, that number is 2.2 million that will become 2.2 million uninsured, of which 1.7 will be eligible for coverage. The remainder, 500,000, are not eligible because of their immigrant status, being illegal immigrants, over the age of 65 or have been legal for less than 5 years. Basically, that's going to be adding a whole lot of newly insured patients to the healthcare infrastructure. So how will the existing healthcare delivery infrastructure going to accommodate this additional millions of uninsured people that are going to be accessing the care? The primary care workforce is where we're going to see an expansion. Those includes doctors, nurses, and frontline workers. Again, primary care is the entry point into healthcare. It is your family practitioners, the OBGYNs, pediatricians. That's the first step. That's the first level of access, and then you might go to a hospital, go to a lab, or see a specialist. So that's where the first level of impact is going to come in. Unfortunately, there already is currently a shortage in those types of providers. And it's only going to get worse with the passage of the Affordable Care Act. And even though the Affordable Care Act has allocated funding to increase those types of, to increase and provide training, more physicians would be a longer-term solution. In the near term, in the shorter term, they're providing training for physician assistants as well as nurse practitioners, because those are the occupations that can actually step in and do some of the work that physicians currently do and extend the role. This figure basically shows the PCP, the primary care provider shortage in California. The first bar that you see is the recommended level, and most of the regions in California for primary care, which is the shorter bar, fall below that recommended supply level, whereas specialists exceed those recommended specialist supply levels. That's only going to get worse as time goes by and the passage of the Affordable Care Act. So as you can see, nurse practitioners and physician assistants have been stepping in and extending the role of physician. There has been a lot of growth in those occupations over the last 5-10 years or more. And as well as allied health professionals, which include respiratory therapists, physical therapists, pharmacists, and pharmacy technicians, and similar occupations. There's also going to be a shortage and increasing demand for those types of occupations. As well as frontline workers. Currently, they currently serve, they fill about half of all healthcare jobs, and their role is becoming increasingly more critical, and they're taking on more responsibilities in the delivery of care. And unfortunately, this is a segment of the workforce that has the least amount of training and development invested in them. So of the 1.7 million eligible in Los Angeles, about 1 million are going to be are the lower income uninsured that are going to be enrolled through the expansion of Medi-Cal. And they typically access care through community centers and health clinics. And as it is now, community clinics are severely impacted with the shortage of primary care physicians and healthcare workers, because most of them are in rural areas or lower income areas that make them less attractive to physicians and healthcare workers. So this is also a factor in the impact on workforce with the expansion of the Medi-Cal and the increased enrollment through those programs. So a lot of changes are occurring in healthcare, including providing care in new settings such as school-based clinics, retail clinics, clinics at the work site, and most of these are run and managed by nurses instead of physicians. And retail clinics, for example, have been on the rise because of their accessibility, their open late hours, they're more affordable, they're more convenient, as well as the models of delivering care are changing. So that impacts the current workforce and how well are they trained to meet those new ways of providing care, which includes a lot more coordination amongst different physicians and groups, and a lot of the things that President Obama has put into place require a lot more technology, knowledge, and so forth. So for our region, which includes Glendale, Burbank, and La Cañada, we are considered a hub for healthcare services. We have 4 state-of-the-art hospitals, over 1,000 medical offices, and healthcare is the largest employer in Glendale and the second largest for the region. So what this means for us is that starting in 2014, we can expect many more previously uninsured who live in our region will be accessing services in our region. And in addition, there will be many newly insured people living in neighboring cities such as Tujunga, Sunland, Eagle Rock, Atwater, Silver Lake, and all of those areas that will be coming into our region to access healthcare services, as we are considered to be such a densely healthcare service area. So local services will have to be expanded, and more workers will have to be hired to meet the increase in patient numbers and volumes. And the majority of this is going to be affecting doctors' offices as well as clinics, lower-end clinics, not so much hospitals. So we are working to develop strategies to assist local healthcare employers in hiring qualified workers, as well as maximize job creation for our region. So we will keep you informed future developments in this area. Questions?
I have a question, just out of curiosity. So we've been deficient, especially in this region, in healthcare workers for quite some time now. And I always think of the healthcare industry as paying fairly well, and maybe I'm not accurate. Why do we continue to not be able to come closer to filling that need?
Again, there are multiple career tracks in healthcare. There are the non-clinical, more administrative positions. There are the clinical ones. Let's say it starts out as a medical assistant, nursing, and so forth, and also physician. A lot of it has to do, I think, with experience and a lot of the way that the industry is right now. There's a lot more need to hire experienced staff like nurses. When you go to apply a new grad nurse, it's very difficult to get in. So I think that's a barrier in terms of having enough hands-on experience to get into those types of careers.
Give one example that we tried to help address. There was a really serious nursing shortage in the Glendale area for years. One of our studies showed there were between 400 to 500 unfilled nursing openings in the Glendale Burbank area. And a big part of the reason for that is that the schools that were producing the nursing graduates, they had something like a 26% dropout rate statewide. And so a lot of the nurses weren't getting through the pipeline, graduating, being certified. So that was an issue that we were working on. But a lot of the positions are fairly technical, and they're not easy to complete. So from the supply end, that could have been a problem that was affecting the region.
Is it when you say they were dropping out, Don, was it the schooling, the amount of time, or was it that technically they weren't capable of grasping that or didn't want to? Or
I think technically it was a lot more difficult than a lot of the students thought. And so a lot of the students were actually out of school, coming back and going into nursing school. So they had other issues related to dealing with families and trying to have enough time to study. And so a lot of it is science, math-based learning. And so they were having a lot of difficulties completing the training. One of the things we did in our program, we had a couple grants to address the situation, is we assigned mentors to work with the students that were having problems so we could identify what issues they were having and supply some extra academic help. And that proved to be a lot better for them.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Just continuing on that, so do we need more nursing schools, like vocational schools, or in our region, or we have enough of them but we don't have enough people attending them?
Well, the recession has kind of thrown a monkey wrench in that whole thing, because there was a tremendous need for many years. And again, as Lori said, most of the positions that were required, for example, in nursing, they wanted skilled nurses and specialty type positions. That's where they were having the greatest amount of difficulty filling the positions, like emergency room nurses and critical care nurses, as opposed to just bringing in brand new nurses to work the floor. So I forgot your question.
I can add something. Also, I think we need to update our schools to include more of the technology. Nowadays, every doctor is required to have an electronic medical records. A lot of hospitals have already converted. So a lot of these schools need to update their programs to include those new ways of delivering care. It's no longer paper charts, and it requires a lot more coordination between different entities and so forth. So I think there might be a disconnect between the jobs out there and what folks are being prepared in the schools.
We do have quite a few schools that do provide training. Glendale College has their own nursing program. Valley College has their own program. There are other community colleges that have nursing programs, but the problem we were finding because of the recession was there was this great demand, and then the recession hit, and a lot of the students that thought they would have a job coming out weren't getting any offers at all. So there was suddenly this bottleneck of all these graduates that were coming into the system, and they couldn't find work. And that was, this has been happening now for about 3 years or so.
Those 500 unfilled jobs, they're more, they need specialized, skilled nurses, basically.
Right. I think
not for entry-level people.
those type of nurses that have that experience and have those specialized skills wouldn't have a problem getting work. It's the new nurses that are graduating and expecting that they're going to help fill the void, and that's not what a lot of the hospitals are looking for.
And can you explain to me what retail clinics are? Is it like
Yes.
urgent cares?
No, it's actually, they're located inside of big box retailers like CVS, Walgreens, Target, and we have two in our region actually, one in Montrose, I believe, and one it's called a Minute Clinic. That's one example that you can find. It's not like you go in and have your blood pressure. There's actually a nurse. You can get more than just a flu shot. You can get some, exam, referral to a doctor, and a lot of them have electronic medical records, and it reports back to your own doctor what issue you were having. So it's not for complicated illnesses, but it's for flus and regular ear infections for kids and things like that can easily be treated by a nurse practitioner.
But there is no physician on the site.
There's no
It's just-
physician on site, yes.
Okay. And the school clinics are the same concept.
Same concepts on site at the schools. So if nurse practitioners can write prescriptions, so if there's something minor going on, usually there is a medical director overseeing the program overall, but on site, no, it's a nurse practitioner that's actually providing care.
Thank you.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And what is next?
Next, we have item 6B1E, Park Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. President Patrick, once again, I'm Mark Sturdivant, Senior Analyst for Community Services and Parks. And I've been asked today to provide you with a brief recap and some photos from the dedication ceremony that was held last week for Phase 1 of the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk. And I realize that most of you were able to attend, so this is largely for the folks at home who didn't have a chance to be there. As you know, Riverwalk is our long-awaited park along the Los Angeles River that includes a half-mile of recreational trail, an entry park, a picnic area, and an equestrian facility. And in spite of the blustery weather, the threat of rain, we had a spectacular turnout. About 200 dignitaries, city officials, and members of the public were there, including equestrians, cyclists, and pedestrians, all eager to see the park. The ceremonies were hosted by President Patrick, who did a wonderful job, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was cold.
It was cold indeed. Mayor Quintero provided opening remarks and introduced representatives from federal, state, and county elected officials, including representatives from Congressman Adam Schiff, State Senator Carol Liu, Assemblymember Mike Gatto, and LA County Supervisor Mike Antonovich. Councilmember Friedman spoke about the importance of Riverwalk to the equestrian community. And Councilmember Najarian spoke about the need for connectivity and making Riverwalk part of a regional network of river trails and parks. It was my pleasure to introduce Polly Escovedo from the State of California's Natural Resources Agency. The agency funded most of Phase 1 of the project through a grant from the California River Parkways Grant Program, and she was nice enough to fly down from Sacramento to be part of our event. And during her remarks, she announced that we had been awarded a grant of nearly $1 million to fund the design and construction of Phase 2 of the Riverwalk project. Phase 2 will extend the pedestrian and bike path from all the way from Betty Davis Park past Flower Street to the Verdugo Wash and provide an entry area at Flower Street, a river overlook, and a small park at the confluence of the Wash. Des Duran introduced all of the city officials who were in attendance, and there were a lot of them. Emil Tadavosian thanked several of us who had worked on the project. And Mark Kenyon, the executive director of Northeast Trees, thanked his team for all of their hard work. And then the fun began. The ribbon was cut, and the public made their way into Riverwalk for the very first time. There were horses. There was even one ridden by Councilmember Friedman. And there were pedestrians, and there were dog walkers, and there were cyclists. And all in all, it was a very exciting morning with more excitement yet to come as we move forward into phases 2 and 3 of the project. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Steve.
On the Riverwalk portion that goes underneath the freeway, there's currently a detour that had us go around on the dirt, not down underneath on the walkway.
Correct.
Why is that, and when will it be changed?
I don't know that it will be changed.
Oh.
That is a requirement of Caltrans, since the Riverwalk passes under their bridge, and the requirement is that the Riverwalk be ADA accessible. So that DG path is at a 5% grade, which makes it accessible for people with disabilities.
Okay, that makes sense.
It was a fabulous, fabulous morning.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that it?
That's it. Item
That's it.
7 is adjournment.
Okay, we are adjourned.